Welcome into K-State Online. I'm Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway here on a Wednesday after K-State basketball starts their season with a win yesterday. We did post-game live last night, but there were still some lingering thoughts out there and enough to get to because it's fun when a team is scoring the basketball and when they look dominant against inferior opponents. That's what K-State was last night in their 93-64 win over Greensboro. So we have a few more things that I want to get to because as we were winding down last night, we got some more questions or comments from other people. The first one that I want to note is one that was left after the fact, so somebody didn't watch live, but they watched the replay of it, and they brought up that nobody's really talked about how much better the defense was in this game compared to the first two exhibition games, and then kind of even from the first 10 minutes of this game. So on that topic, Drew, what do you think it was that led to K-State tightening up defensively? Because you gave up 64 to Greensboro. They're better than Newman. Like if they played today, Greensboro beats Newman by probably 20 points. So what was it, do you think, that led to the defense tightening up? Because I know what it is, and I'll talk about it in a moment, and it's kind of a bigger picture thing, but I figured I'd get your take on it first since you were there.
Well, I mean, we might be talking about the same thing because mine is kind of a bigger picture, overarching thing as well. And I think that it's just, defense is hard, and that's why it's not something that we enjoy talking about. And it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of time playing all together. Like you have to really, 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 in the defensive scheme that K-State likes to run, trust all the guys around you that they're going to make the right plays and be there. And, we were able to see more of that trust last night. Elias Rapik was one of the players that really stood out, especially on the help side, that he was always there and was always willing to go help. And then, I mean, some of it is just a want to. And this is kind of another bigger picture thing too of like, Abdi Bashir and Andre Kostic are going to be two very polarizing figures all season. Those two can fill it up whenever they want. I was just at a Bosco Boys episode earlier today that comes out tomorrow where we talked a little bit about the basketball game last night. And K-State is one of few teams in the country that have guys that can make shots the way that Abdi Bashir and Andre Kostic can. But they're polarizing because, they're not the best defensively, to put it lightly. And that is kind of where the want to comes into it because Kostic was the 11th person off the bench yesterday. And I don't think that was a coincidence. I think that was K-State staff really challenging him on the defensive end as like, if you're not going to play defense, you're not going to be out here. And I think that he kind of needs that. And the whole team needs that because they need him out there. So that's kind of where the want to and the bigger picture comes from. But I think that it's a little bit of the want to and the care. But I think that it's also just when you have so many newcomers, defense is all about trust. And I think that they didn't fully trust what they were seeing and what their teammates were going to be able to do in the first two games.
So you kind of mentioned it there, and where I think the difference was that came into it is think of during the game when the defense looked like what we saw in the two exhibition games. Well, it was early, and it was K-State played 11 guys in the first 9 minutes of the game. Well, I'll tell you what changed. K-State quit playing guys that shouldn't be playing. Like they played their best players when things started to, progress further into the game. So you look at the second half, Doreen Buka only played, well, he didn't play at all. 0 minutes for him. Stephen Osei, only 3 minutes. Taj Manning, only 3 minutes. David Castillo, 7 minutes. Like Moby, 6 minutes. Those guys played in mop-up time for the most part. Or, in like Moby's case, played to his role. Like Moby played 17 minutes last night and started. I don't think that should ever happen again this year. I think 17 is about the max that he has. And it doesn't mean that he's a bad player. It just means that he has a different role. And that's why I was so bothered by how the exhibitions played out, because it was kind of a tease for everybody where, yeah, basketball's back. You're playing a good opponent like Mizzou or a team you should blow out Newman, but you couldn't really get a real understanding of what they were because they were playing everybody and they weren't playing a normal rotation. Well, then we
And that
saw
was,
last night the rotation got a little bit more normal, and when it did, K-State smacked the crap out of UNC Greensboro.
and I think that was part of the problem in that first 9 minutes is when you're playing 11 guys, it can get a little bit wonky. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a time last night where I kind of made a joke to DY and Fan of like, it feels like every dead ball, 2 players are coming into the game. Like that, and that's just something that can't be happening. And when they tighten the rotation, I don't think that is a coincidence that they blew the crap out of UNC Greensboro after the rotation was shorter, and you had your best players on the floor, and your best players and your most polarizing players were a lot more willing to defend. Like that was a much better version of Andre Kostic on the defensive end than we have seen through the first 3 games, because I'm still counting the exhibition as like times that we have seen what can be out there. And like Abdi Bashir is really willing and able to scrap when he needs to. But like, I mean, you even saw him in the middle of things last night, disrupting. So it is kind of like a combination of just the want to and the care, and also just when you shorten the rotation, your best players are in, typically good things follow. And it was the first time in the 3 games that we'd seen that it was like a legitimate, hey, a legitimate time that we could see that there was like a rotation building where like you could get 8 guys probably into the game instead of just, it felt like there for a little bit until UNC Greensboro extended the lead out to 10. It kind of felt like K-State was going to try and play everybody in that first like half of the first half last night, and you just can't do that. But it was good to see the adjustment, and then once they adjusted, because I know that you probably would have pointed this out last night in the beginning, but I just wasn't there because I was at the press conference. But you know, there are times where Jerome Tang has made a great adjustment during the game in the first half, but has gone away from it at the start of the second half. The adjustment lineup was the lineup that started the second half last night, which massive improvement.
First half for K-State last night, they made 18 total substitutions. In the second half, let me count it up for you real quick.
By the way, absurd that they made 18 first half substitutions when so many of them came in the first 9 minutes.
Yeah. They made 17 in the second half when the game got put out of reach. And so let's see, 5:29 is when almost half of them started to get made. And by that point, K-State, let's see what the at that stage, K-State was up by 23 points or 21 points when that happened. So,
Yeah, that
like,
was
that's
that was the point where it seemed like K-State let off the gas a little too early, and then they had to get it back on.
so K-State really, like, that was the thing with the defense is that now, look, I don't think that this team is going to be anything to write home about defensively this year, but they're going to improve. And also, you're just going to look better when you put your best players on the floor because then you're stressing the other team on the defensive end. And so then it has less that they can do. And also, like, it's easier to combat some of that stuff when you're moving fast like K-State wants to. Some of the other things that we missed from last night, and one of the questions, and I thought this was a good one, was who's the best 8-man rotation? Because that's kind of what we're talking about right here. I think there's no doubt, at least in my mind, and what we saw last night, that you know that your best 5 on the floor is going to involve the 4 of Haggerty, Bashir, Johnson, and Kostic. Beyond that, then it gets a little bit questionable on what's going to come out.
Yeah, the back half of the 4, I think you're still probably going to have Kamari McGriff. You need a little bit of size on this team. Elias Rapique would probably be my 6th. 7th and 8th might be more matchup dependent. Like I think that Moby is probably solidly in the 7th spot. 8th, I could go back and forth between CJ Jones and David Castillo. And you're really hoping that one of those guys takes a jump. CJ Jones got a little bit of flack like in the aftermath of the game, but like he was fine when he was out there. Like you probably want that to be David Castillo because I think the ceiling is higher. And I think that so far out of the three games that we've seen, he's probably the most improved player from where he was of the returners. So I think that Castillo is probably your eighth. And then if you want to go to a ninth, that's probably where CJ Jones is.
Well, and you know what? Credit to David Castillo. There were some things that he did last night with the ball that I thought were actually pretty good. So there might be room for the improvement there. Yeah, I think it's that either Rapiak or McGriff will be the 5 with the 4 that I mentioned, and then beyond that, like kind of hard to see where things factor out. Like I think you might hope that long term, and the fact that they're not redshirting him and that he's going to play like Steven Osei, you're probably hoping that just because I have a hard time seeing it with Buka, and so I don't know what you're going to get there. And I mean that's evidenced by the fact he didn't play in the second half last night. I think you're probably right that it's Castillo and CJ Jones is in there. So I think like if I had to guarantee it today, it's Haggerty, Bashir, Johnson, Kostic, Rapiak, McGriff, CJ, and Moby. That is your 8 right now that you're going to see, I think, on a regular basis until something else changes. I think they're going to continue trying to sprinkle in minutes for David Castillo to see if he's coming along and they can make something out of that, and that he can provide something. And then you're maybe hoping that Buka or Osei have some transformations there. I think Osei is probably your best bet on getting something that's a little bit less of a finished product because Buka was playing professional basketball. He's listed as a junior because he's 20, 21 years old, whereas Osei is coming from the junior college ranks, and we know those guys are very, very, very raw, and they don't get a lot of legitimate basketball knowledge when they're playing at the JUCO level. It's a lot of just, hey, we're going to try to out-athlete everybody or shoot a bunch of threes and take 5 seconds off the shot clock. So I think that's K-State's got a really good 3. We saw that last night. They got 3 dudes that can score, and Kostic can make it a really fun 4.
Yeah, I was gonna say they at some point will have a really, really fun 4 because we still haven't quite seen it yet. But I think when Kostic gets comfortable, like that's gonna be a really, really fun 4 that can really fill it up. And there's going to be games where like Haggerty could be in the mid-20s, Johnson could be in the high teens, Bashir could be in the high teens, Kostic could be in the high teens, and then you're just really outscoring everybody.
On this topic as well, this was asked last night by Austin. He said that Elias Repiak should start. Or where do you stand on that? What should the 5 be on Saturday night against Bellarmine?
Saturday night, I'm willing to call this the death lineup. A little 2015-16 Warriors action with playing small and having Elias play the 5 and Kostic start at the 4. Like I don't know why you wouldn't just go with that because that's your best 5 right now. Or I would even be okay if Kamari McGriff was the 5. But I think that long term, the more that you can have that core of 4 on the court altogether, the better that you end up being long term. Like and that's just because I haven't seen anything offensively or defensively that makes you feel like Moby should be somebody that starts at the 4. Because when he starts at the 4 and you have a McGriff out there or even Rapiak at some points, like your spacing is a little bit weird. Defensively, you're probably actually a little bit better because Moby is just a better defender than what Andre Kostic is at this point. But the spacing is a little bit clunky and it just feels a little bit like last year if you have like Moby play the 4 and play a lot of minutes. where like with that lineup, your spacing was beautiful in the second half. There were times where, I mean, they become very, very hard to guard when PJ Haggerty has the ball up top or Nate Johnson. And then on the wing is Andre Kostic, and on the baseline is Abdi Bashir. And they did that multiple times last night in the second half. So I like the better spacing, and I'd sacrifice points given up for what they can do offensively.
So in the off season, when we did the fast break episodes with Scott Wildcat over at Bosco's Boys, I had on there that my starting five. I told him, I said, I don't think this is what it will be to start the year, but I think the best starting five come middle of the season when you want to be peaking, it involves Haggerty, Bashir, Johnson, Kostic is a little bit of a smaller four, and then Rapiak as essentially your five, and you're just going small. And you can work McGriff in there too if you want a little bit more beef to it, and then obviously like Moby can do some things to overwhelm guys, because there's going to be a few games this year, and not just like non-combat opponents, where I think Moby is going to be out there with those four guys or some combination of the three. And he's going to, because he's so athletic, like he's going to do some really fun and nice things with them. But yes, I think eventually we're going to see that starting five change. And I think that like if you're wanting to start a game hot and you're playing Iowa State in early February and you need to make a statement, you want to play your best basketball the first 2 minutes. So put your best five on the floor. And by that point in the season, I would hope that Rapiak is in there as the five. Unless somebody has made, like I said earlier, some massive transformation. It's like, no, Kamari McGriff has to be that guy. Moby has to be that guy. I just don't think we're going to have that happen, though.
And there's also not very many teams now in college basketball or basketball period that like they don't have like a skilled player that is taller and has a lot of length that can play the four. Like that is where like the advantage of having Kostic play that four spot. Like he's not going to be overwhelmed with size, because there aren't teams that just will play two traditional bigs anymore. Like if this was 10 to 15 years ago, you probably worry about that, or like having Abdi Bashir out there too as like somebody that could just get overwhelmed with size. But like basketball in 2025, like that is where we're all kind of trending towards, is just a bunch of guys that are like 6'6", 6'8" range, where they have really long arms that are really skilled basketball players. I mean, that everybody jokes about the Houston model, but I mean, hey, that kind of is what Houston is. Like a bunch of guys that are taller, they're long, they can shoot. Unless your name is JoJo Tugler, but he's an all-world defender, so they don't need him to do anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I just it's fascinating to think about, and I thought that there were still some good conversations and questions that we weren't able to get to last night. So figure we might as well talk a little bit more about K-State basketball, because they got off to a fun start last night. The totality was a fun start. Maybe not the actual start.
First 10 minutes was not fun. And you look ahead to Saturday, and like I said on the live show, that's a game where if you're playing your game, you should be in the hundreds.
Yeah. Nope. This team's going to score a lot. I mean, we were talking yesterday. K-State's total was 83.5 set before the game. I was like, yeah, that's not too low for me to or too high for me to put a lot on there. Bellarmine started their season, we talked about it, with a 104-59 loss to Georgia. K-State's going to be better than Georgia this season, or at least has a better collection of talent than Georgia.
Yeah, they at least are, if not better, like a good Georgia year would be like what we think that K-State could be, like that 9 to 10 seed range.
Yeah. Also, according to KenPom, Bellarmine is the third worst remaining opponent on K-State's schedule this year. The only two teams that will be worse than them, Mississippi Valley State and UL Monroe.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why this game on Saturday needs to be a game that you blitz them. Like that, everybody jokes about like gaming the net, but like that's a game that you probably need to win by 30 or 40.
Yeah. All right, well, that'll do it for today. We'll get out of here. We'll talk football on Thursday. and Friday, we're going to do it. It's a bye week. There's some fun that needs to be had. We flirted with the idea of doing it last week, but there was still a game to focus on. We were on to Texas Tech. Well, now we're back to no football game this week. So let's focus on something fun. And we're going to do a little KSO instant classic because we're going to, just like we would have for the summer, we are going to talk about and go back and relive K-State's win over KU from a few weeks ago, because it is one of those games that years down the road, when you're just searching through and you want to put on highlights of K-State whipping KU, that's going to be one of the games that you do, because you're going to go, there were some fun big plays. It was a dominant performance, and it was a hilarious way to beat KU, given how the season had gone and really how that game started. So we will look back at that game through the lens of KSO Classic on Friday, and then Saturday I'll be live after the game against Bellarmine. Might be solo, might be with Jimmy, might be with DY. Who knows? Somebody might join. Drew might be there from a wedding. Probably not, unless they lose, and then we'll get him in. So a lot of things on the table. Then we get to Monday of next week, regular week. We'll hear from Chris Kleiman, go through it all, and then Saturday they will be on the road at Oklahoma State for football. Back-to-back road games coming after this bye week for K-State. So we'll talk Cats tomorrow and through the foreseeable future at KSO until, they shut us down or whatever happens, because that's really all that we can do or should do since we get paid to do it. Hey, what's the temperature set in the house behind you? Did it say 67 on there?
Yeah, 67.
I mean, I wish I lived in a world where I could set the house at 67. Have you been running? Is the air running, or is it just like shaded so it hasn't gotten too warm?
No, it's running.
I used to be able to let my house get to cool temperatures before I had kids, and now it's like we have to blaze ourselves up at night, and then we have to. It's in the dead of summer. My wife's like, that thing needs to be set at whatever. I'm like, no, let's save a little bit of money here. But
my dad's pride and joy. We're not allowed to touch it.
I mean, I'm just saying, I wish maybe one of these days when these kids toughen up a little bit.
My wife and I's apartment is set to 72 typically. So that's where we go.
Yeah. So you guys are living like 6-month-old babies, keeping the temperature not too cold, not too warm. But that's the thing. During the winter, my wife's like, oh, we gotta keep it high. I'm like, why? It's gonna be so hot. And she's like, we got to keep air running for them. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'm sure there are a lot of other people out there that have felt my pain, or just, again, toughen up, kids. Welcome to the real world. It's dog eat dog out there. Again, back again tomorrow, talking K-State football during the bye week. K-State's got a crucial 3-game stretch to finish things out. A lot of topics that we can dive into, and then we'll do some fun things on Friday. It'll be a good time. See you later.